everyone, good day. I'm Nika Gil San Pedro. Today, I will going to discuss some legal codes in tourism and hospitality industry. Legal aspect in tourism and hospitality industry. The first legal code that we will going to discuss is the National Building Code of the Philippines or Republic Act number 6541. What is Republic Act 6541 all about? Republic Act 6541 is an act to ordain and institute a national building code of the Philippines, which was enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the Philippines in Congress last August 26, 1972. Declaration of Policy. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the state to safeguard life, health, and property and public welfare, consistent with the principles of environmental management and control, and to this end make it the purpose of this code to provide for all buildings and structure a framework of minimum standards and requirements by guiding, regulating, and controlling their location, seating, design, quality, of materials, construction, use, occupancy, maintenance, including their environment, utilities, fixtures, equipment, and mechanical, electrical, and other system installations. Let us discuss the important parts of the National Building Code of the Philippines to guide you in your next real estate endeavor. Scope. The scope of Republic Act number 6541 includes design, location, seating, constructions, alterations, repair, conversion, use, occupancy, maintenance, moving, and demolitions of both private and public buildings. Next, observe public health and safety. One of the main reasons why the National Building Code is created is to ensure public safety. All buildings must abide to certain principles of constructions. All materials that are needed must also be environmental friendly. Next is maintenance. It is a must for owners to maintain the ordinance of their properties. Regular maintenance check is a must for all buildings to make sure that everything is in tip-top shape. Next is dangerous sites. The law also forbids construction in lands or sites that are deemed unsanitary of dangerous. Lands that are considered dangerous should undergo certain renovations. The law also notes that an individual's property should be in safe distance to the following elements: polluted streams or bodies of water, volcanic site, and any type of land that can be a source of explosion. Next is dangerous buildings. The law also defines the characteristic of a dangerous building. This property usually suffers from poor structure, unsafe agrees, contributes to pollution, has defects, or have been damaged by earthquake or fire. New design. Those who are planning to own redesigning their property are also under this law. Again, the code wants those who are remodeling or redesigning to use good structures and materials. Next is coordinate with municipal and provincial ordinance. The code asks for owners and the local government to cooperate with each other during the preparations of the building, the property. Next, let me show you the example scenario where is Republic Act number 6541 is applicable.
So has been living here with her husband and 4 children. This small room serves as the kitchen, living room, dining area, and bathroom. At night, they all sleep in this less than 10 square meter bedroom upstairs. Because the houses were really small, we can barely stretch our legs here. It's hot and cramped, but that's better than nothing. According to the Philippine government, almost 6 million homes need to be built for empowered people. And that backlog is expected to reach almost 8 million by 2022, which means thousands of homes need to be built every day in order to meet. But that's not happening because government says it hasn't enough money. We are producing less than the need for help. This also budget that except for the calamities, of course, we fall short like, to meet the housing. Those are the priorities of education, health, economy. Every year, this lack of housing is made worse for thousands of families placed by typhoons and earthquakes. And the decades-long.
So you can see on the video, it talked about relocating of houses that's still applicable in the Republic Act number 6541 because it related on building houses. Well, some of this housing relocating of offered to this informal settler are used improperly by themselves. Some of these people who got relocated will rent these new homes built by the government to other people for their own profit and return to the slums and then eventually blame everything to the government. These peoples are called professional squatters. It's kinda sad that some of government offers to them is used in a wrong way. That's why eradicating property in Philippines will never be easy. Next. So let's proceed on Code on Sanitations on the President Decree number 856. Background of the Presidential Decree number 856 law. This is signed by President Ferdinand Marcos on December 23, 1975 in the city of Manila. The presidential decree is composed of 22 chapters and 106 sections. Whereas the health of the people being of paramount importance, all efforts of public services should be directed towards the protections and promotion of health. And whereas with the advance in the field of sanitation in recent years, there arises the need for updating and codifying our scattered sanitary law to ensure that they are keeping with modern standards of sanitations and provide a handy reference guide for their enforcement. So, Philippine Sanitation Code, Presidential Decree number 856, the Philippine Sanitation Code sets sanitary standards for drinking water, food, and other business establishment. Industrial hygiene schools, health services, market, slaughterhouses, transport vehicles, terminals, and other service stations, and lodging areas and infrastructures, among many others. It regulates nuisance, anything that ensures health, endangers life, opens senses, or produces discomfort to the community, and activities concerning dead persons, their funeral, and remains. Importantly, it regulates other forms of pollutions not covered in the above mentioned places like that caused by certain substances, radiations, noise, and biological pollutants, among others. It is also set there are requirements for the collections of sewage, operation of sewerage works and sewage treatment plants, and construction of septic tanks and disposal of septic tanks effluents. Us discussions of the law. The objective of this code on sanitation is the improvement of the way of the Filipinos while directing public health services toward the protections and promotion of the health of the people. This legal code contains the provisions for food establishments, In this law means establishment where food or drinks are manufactured, processed, stored, sold, or served. In order to operate a food establishment for public patronage, a permit shall be obtained from the local health office. All food must be obtained from sources approved by the local health authority. The law makes provisions, among others, requirements for food establishment structure, quality and protection of all types of food, fish marketing areas, inspections or evaluation of food establishment, health certificates of employees, or bac- bactericidal treatment. This law provides for water supply, standards for drinking water, and their bacteriological and chemical examinations, together with the evaluations of results, shall comport to the criteria set by the national drinking water standards. The treatment of water to ensure it's safe for drinking and disinfectant of contaminated water sources, together with their distribution systems, should be accordance with procedures prescribed by the department. Other provisions include the examination required for drinking water, examining laboratory submissions of water samples, the measures to protect drinking water from contaminations, etc. In addition, the code makes provisions for requirements in the operation of sewerage works, sewerage treatment plants, the responsibilities of cities and municipalities for providing a system of collecting and transporting and disposing solid wastes in their areas for jurisdictions in a manner approved by the local health authority. The authority of the health secretary to promulgate rules and regulations for the control and preventions of the environment pollutions. Next. So let's proceed to the example scenario where is Presidential Decree number 856 Code on Sanitation of the Philippines is applicable. Let me show you a video.
From the least number of health violations to the most. Hygiene issues, dirty food handling, unsanitary kitchen conditions. You might be stunned to learn some of the unsavory secrets behind the food you're served. But we'll show you how to protect yourself.
Japan spent decades protecting us from food that bites back. He's been at center stage for some major food poisoning outbreaks.
We continue to monitor the closure.
He helped solve last year's Burger mystery at the Canadian National Exhibition, where more than 200 people got sick. But that's not all. What's one of the worst things you ever saw during your time?
I think one of the worst one I ever have to deal with was that the food court that the health inspector shut down because of a heavy rat infestation. So when we actually doing the inspection at that time, we actually saw live rats running around.
Live rats?
Yes, right. For the health inspector walking to see a live rat running around, wow, that's an eye opener.
We've got another eye opener for you. The first restaurant secret revealed in our checkup. Out of almost 5,000 inspection reports, about 1 in 4 has at least one major violation. Almost a quarter of them had at least one major violation, if not more.
So loss of patient hand washing. To me, that's crucial because you know what we do with our hands. Imagine all the bacteria, the germs, or even pathogens can go on to the surface of the food preparation area, or can go directly onto your food.
That's right. Our restaurant checkup reveals hand washing is one of the most common problems. We want to see for ourselves. So we're back at our undercover stakeout at a Vancouver Moxie's.
So, like what we see, the video was an example of case that this law are applicable because as we can see, it is obviously against the law because the unsanitary situation inside of the restaurants. We all know that the number one priority of the law is the health safety of everyone. This legal code contains the provision for food establishments, so this food establishment has obligations to maintain the safety and sanitary inside of their establishment. Let's proceed to the next legal code that we're going to discuss. Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, or Republic Act number 8749. What is RA 8749 is all about? No, it is known as Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, an act providing for a comprehensive air pollution control policy and for other purposes, contains 7 chapters and 56 sections, approved on June 23, 1999. Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, Republic Act number 8749, one of the silent features of this act is the establishment of a multi-sectoral integrated air quality improvement framework and air quality control action plan which will serve as a primary guide for air pollution management and control in the country, adopting a multi-sectoral a participatory approach, also called partnership approach to a healthy air or people driven approach, means that ideas and comments shall be gathered from the all stakeholders and information is largely disclosed to the public. Alongside many of the regulatory measures, all sources of air pollutant emissions are also mandated by this act to ensure a permit to operate apart from the Environmental Compliance Certificate or ECC. Importantly, this act set the emission limits for various types of pollutants for both stationary and mobile, including smoking, fuel, and additives, ozone depleting substances, greenhouse gases, and organic pollutants, among many others. Declarations of principles. The state shall protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. The state shall promote and protect the global environment to attain sustainable development while recognizing the primary responsibility of local government units to deal with environmental problems. The state recognized that responsibility of cleaning the habitat environment is primary area based. The state also recognized the principle that polluters must pay. Finally, the state recognized that a clean and healthy environment is for the good of all and should therefore be the concern of all. Um, Recognition of the rights. Recognition of the rights pursuant to the above declared principles, the following rights of citizens are hereby sought to be recognized and should and states shall seek to guarantee their enjoyment. A. The right to breathe clean air. B. The right to utilize and enjoy all natural resources according to the principles of sustainable development. C. The right to participate in the formulations, planning, implementations, and monitoring of environmental policies and programs and in the decision-making process. D. The right to participate in the decision-making process concerning development policies, plans, and programs, projects, or activities that may have adverse impact on the environment and public health. Next. Recognitions of the right. E. The right to be informed of the nature and extent of the potential hazard of any activity, undertaking, or project to be served timely notice of any significant rise in the level of pollutions and accidental of or deliberate release in the atmosphere of harmful or hazardous substances. the right of access to public records which citizen may need to exercise his or her rights effectively under this act. The right to bring action in court or quasi-judicial bodies to enjoy all activities in violations of environmental laws and regulations, to compel the rehabilitation and clean up of affected area, and to seek the impositions of penal sanctions against violators of environmental laws, and the right to bring actions in court for compensations of personal damages resulting from the adverse environmental and public health impact of a project or activity. So let's proceed to the example scenario where is Republic Act number 8749 is applicable.
Nakalatay. Ang Republic Act number 8749 o mas kilalang Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999. Huwag po tayo magsunog ng basuran. Ang Republic Act number 8749 o Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999 ay naglalayong panatilihing malinis ang hangin sa pamamagitan ng pagbuo ng mga pambansang programa at pagtigil sa polusyon sa hangin. Ito ay isang paalaala sa atin na hindi lamang sa pagsusubo sa iyong basura ang sanhi ng pagkakaroon ng polusyon sa hangin. Maaari din itong mula sa iyong paninigarilyo, sa maitim na usok ng iyong sasakyan at sa mga industriya pagawaan na naglalaba ng mga maitim o labis na usok na siyang dahilan upang umalo ito sa ating malinis na hangin na nagiging sanhi ng pagkakaroon ng polusyon sa ating hangin.
In the video, it discussed some informations about Republic Act number 8749 or Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999. He also gives some examples of the causes of air pollutions. Those activities should be avoided, like burning of fuel or fossil fuels without the permissions from the government, is one of the applicable cases of this law. Safe Spaces Act Republic Act number 11313. What is Republic Act 11313 all about? This act shall be known as Safe Spaces Act, Republic Act number 11313, signed on April 17, 2019. Republic of the Philippines Congress of the Philippines Metro Manila, 7th and Congress 3rd regular sessions began and held in Metro Manila on Monday, the 23rd of July 2018. An act defining gender-based sexual harassment and in streets, public spaces, online workplaces, educational or training institutes, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties, therefore otherwise known as the Safe Spaces Act, is more comprehensive act that creates more comprehensive coverage of gender-based sexual harassment in any space, including online spaces. Declarations of policies. It is the policy of the state to value the dignity of every woman, persons, and guarantee full respect for human rights. It is likewise the policy of the state to recognize the role of woman in nation building and ensure the fundamental equality before the law of woman and men. The state also recognizes that both men and women must have equality, security, and safety not only in private but also on the street, public spaces, online workplaces, and educational training institutions. Let us discuss the term as used in this act. Catcalling refers to unwanted remarks directed towards a person, commonly done in the form of wolf whistling and misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist slurs. Next, employee refers to a person who is exchanged for remunerations, agrees to perform specified services for another person, whether natural or juridical, and whether private or public, who exercises fundamental control over the work, regardless of the term or durations of agreement, provided that for the purpose of this law, a person who is detailed to an entity under a subcontracting or secondment agreement should be considered an employee. Next, employer refers to a person who exercises control over an employee, provided that for the purpose of this act, the status or condition of the latter's employment or engagement shall be disregarded. Next, gender refers to a set of socially ascribed characteristics, norms, roles, attitudes, values, and expectations identifying the social behavior of men and women and the relationship between them. Next, gender-based online sexual harassment refers to an on the contact targeted at a particular person that causes or likely to cause another mental, emotional, or psychological distress and fear of personal safety. Sexual harassment acts include unwanted sexual remarks and comment threats, uploading or sharing of one photos without consent, video and audio regarding cyber stalking and online identity theft. Next, gender identity and or expressions refers to the personal sense of identity as characterized, among others, by manners of clothing, inclinations, and behavior in relation to masculine or feminine conventions. A person may have a male or female identity with psychological characteristic of the opposite sex, in which case this person is considered transgender. Next, public spaces refer to street and alleys, public parks, schools, buildings, malls, bars, restaurants, transportation terminals, public markets, spaces used as evacuation centers, government offices, public utility vehicles, as well as private vehicles covered by an app-based transport network services and other recreational spaces such as but not limited to cinema halls, theaters, and spas. And next, stalking refers to conduct directed at person involving the repeated visual or physical proximity, non-consensual communications, or a combination thereof that cause or will likely cause a person to fear for one's own safety on or the safety of others or to suffer emotional distress. Next, let's proceed to the Bawal Bastos Law or the Safe Spaces Act Republic Act 1131. The prohibited coursing, wolf whistling, catcalling, leering, intrusive gazing, taunting, unwanted invitations, misogynistic, transphobic, and homophobic, and sexist source. Those are the prohibited in this law, and the penalties are first violations, 1,000 fine, 12 hours community service, and mandatory attendance to a gender sensitivity seminar. Second violation, 6 to 10 days imprisonment or a fine of 3,000 pesos. And for the third violations, up to 30 days imprisonment and a fine of 10,000 pesos. Next, let's proceed to the purpose and objective of the Safe Spaces Act. One of the purpose of Republic Act 11313 is to broaden its reach in ensuring an individual's sense or personal space and public safety. Similarly, Republic Act 7877 or Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995 is closely related to Republic Act 11313 or Safe Spaces Act of 2019. The former has a limited definition of sexual harassment, which is only confined to the harassments being committed in employment, education, or training environment and for the purposes committed by very specific person. Next, let's proceed to the example scenario where is Republic Act number 11313 law or safe spaces applicable. I will show you the video.
Nice. Don't go. Stay like that. Hey, girls, why don't you take your break now? We got just enough time for a little.
Just ignore them. Charlie again? I got it back for you. Thank you. Drinks after work tonight. Leave your car, I promise. Oh, and now a selfie on his motorcycle. And a text. It's a great ride.
So that video was an example of sexual harassment and that against in the law. Anyone who can experience that the situation can complain a case against the person who did that to you. That scenario showed to us of one of the examples that are applicable in this law. There are many instances, however, that sexual harassment occurs in public places and even online not covered by Republic Act 7877. Further, the Safe Spaces Act also protects people of all genders from online sexual harassment, such as in social media or electronic mail. Moreover, the Safe Spaces Act does not limit to the persons who are liable for sexual harassment in education and training institutions. The person liable to the aforementioned articles do not necessarily need to be superior or who have more ascendancy over the sexual harassment survivor commit sexual harassment. Republic Act 11313 also include the protections even to the cyberspace and provides acts that their corresponding penalties. Domestic Workers Act or Batas Kasambahay, Republic Act number 10361. So what is Republic Act number 10361 all about? An act instituting policies for the protection and welfare of domestic workers. Republic Act number 10361, otherwise known as Domestic Worker Acts or Batas Kasambahay. The Republic Act number 10361 was a consolidation of Senate Bills number 78 and House Bill number 6144, passed by the Senate and House of Representatives and was approved by His Excellency Benigno S. Aquino III, or President of the Philippines on 18th of January 2013. So what is domestic workers or kasambahay? It refers to any person engaged in domestic work within a employment relationship, such as but not limited to the following general household nursemaid or yaya, cook, gardener, or laundry persons, but shall exclude any person who performs domestic work only occasionally or sporadically, not on an occupational basis. Let's discuss the declaration's policies. It is hereby declared that the state strongly appears labor as a primary social force in committed to respect, promote, protect, and realize the fundamental principles and rights to work, including but not limited to abolitions of child labor, eliminations of all forms of forced labor, discrimination in employment and occupations, and trafficking in persons, specifically women and children. The state adheres in internationally accepted work conditions for workers in general, establishes labor standards for domestic workers in particular toward the decent employment and income, enhanced coverage of social protection, respect for human rights, and strengthen social dialogue. The state recognized the need to protect the rights of domestic workers against abuse, harassments, violence, economic exploitations, performance of work that is hazardous to their physical and mental health, and the stage in protecting domestic workers and recognizing their special needs to ensure safe and healthful working conditions, promotes and gender-sensitive measures in the formulations and implementations of policies and programs affecting the local domestic work. Coverage of the law. This act applies to all domestic workers employed and working within the country. Rights, and let's discuss the rights and privileges. Standards of treatment. The employer or any member of the household shall not subject a domestic worker or kasambahay to any kind of abuse, not inflict any form of physical violence or harassment, or any act tending to degrade the dignity of a domestic worker. Board lodging and medical attendance. The worker should provide for the basic necessities of the domestic workers to include at least three adequate meals a day and humane sleeping arrangement that ensure safety. The employer shall provide appropriate rest and assistance to the domestic worker in case of illnesses and injuries sustained during service without loss of benefits. At no instance shall the employer withdraw or hold in abeyance the provisions of these basic necessities as punishment or disciplinary action to the domestic workers. Guarantee of privacy. Respect for the privacy of domestic workers shall be guaranteed at all times and shall extend to all forms of communications and personal effects. This guarantee equally recognizes that the domestic workers is obligated to render satisfactory service at all times. Access to outside communications. The employer should grant the domestic worker access to outside communication during free time, provided that in case of emergency, access to communication shall be granted even during work time. Should the domestic worker make use of the employer's telephone or other communication facilities, the cost shall be borne by the domestic workers unless such charges are waived by the employer. Right to education and training. The employer should afford the domestic the workers the opportunity to finish basic educations and may allow access to alternative learning systems and as far as practicable higher education or technical vocational training. The employer shall adjust the work schedule of the domestic worker to allow such access to education or training without hampering the services required by the employer. Next, prohibitions against privileged information. All communication information pertaining to the employer or members of the household should be treated as privileged and confidential, shall not be disclosed by the domestic worker during and after employment. Such privileged information shall be inadmissible in evidence except where the suit involves the employer or any members of the household in crime against persons, property, personal liberty, and security and custody. Next, let's discuss what is the significance of the law. The Republic Act 1036-1 is highly significant because it underscores the need to offer special protections to domestic workers or kasambahay, the sectors of workers which is turned upward household employers who are workers themselves the opportunity to focus on work elsewhere for their livelihood. What are the obligations of the employer to a kasambahay under this law? Under the Republic Act 1036.1, the household employer has the following obligations: to treat the kasambahay with dignity, not subject him/her to any kind of abuse or inflict any form of physical violence or harassment, to provide the basic necessities of the kasambahay, at least 3 adequate meals a day, and humane sleeping arrangement that ensures safety, to provide appropriate rest assistance in case of illness, injuries sustained during the service without the loss of benefits, to respect the privacy of kasambahay extend to all forms of communications, personal effects, to grant kasambahay access to outside communication during free time or even during poor time in case of emergency, to offer the kasambahay the opportunity to finish basic educational and allow access to higher education or training, to register all kasambahay the registrar of domestic workers in the barangay where the employer resides, to comply with the terms condition of employee such as health and safety, daily rest period, weekly rest period, minimum wage 2,500 in Metro Manila, 2,000 in charactered cities and first class tone and 1,500 in other tones, 13-month pay, leave benefits and social and other benefits. Let's proceed. What are the benefits? What are the penalties for employees for not complying with the new law? The new law provides that any violation of its provision which are declared under lawful shall be penalized with a fine not less than 10,000 but more than 40,000. Since the new law also requires registration with the SSS PhilHealth, pag-ibig, the existing laws in this regard must be applied. For instance, under the revised Social Security Law or Republic Act 8282 of 1997, failure or refusal to comply with the provisions of the law shall be punished by a fine of not less than 5,000, not more than 20,000, or imprisonment or not less than 6 years and 1 day, not more than 12 years or both at discretion of the court. Let us watch the example scenario where is Domestic Worker Act or Batas Kasambahay or Republic Act number 1036.1 is applicable.
Ng pagkain. Kaya wag kang magreklamo ang karapatan mo reklamo kasi hindi ka namin i-demonstrate ng bata in education. Magaling din naman sa English. So, ang bata sabi niya, vote you 10,000 dirham. Tens of thousands of women every single year migrate to the United Arab Emirates. They say goodbye to their families and their very young children, and they hope that they will be securing salaries for their families' futures. But they have no guarantee that they will end up with such salaries or even good working conditions. Ganito po, pagka panahon po ng mga mula doon, wala na po kita mga tao kasi konting naipin po ng isda. Tapos, pagka talaga pong walang-wala, ang iba pumupunta sa malayo para maghanap-buhay. Nagdesisyon po ako sa pag-abroad po dahil sa hirap namin buhay. Ang mga anak ko, puro sakit lagi. Ang pagkain namin, kulang at kulang kami. Kaya nagdesisyon ako mag-intong. Makadalang taon lang ikapo ako. At meron na tayong panghanap buhay. Ikapo ako dito. Kaso nga lang, hindi pinaadan. Tracked down some domestic workers in the Philippines who had returned from the UAE to discuss what had happened to them. We found that many of them were subject to egregious level of abuse, working very, very long hours. Some of them were even physically and sexually abused. Yun ang mga amo ko, yung amo kong lalaki, nasa labas, nagtutuyo ng nagbibilag siya ng vape. Sinisigawan niya ako, sabi sa akin, pumunta ko dito, sabi kong ganyan, sabi niya ganyan, pagbilad daw, tumulong daw ako magbilad ng date, sabi ko, namaplansya ako, sabi niya ganyan, sabi ko ganyan sa kanila, sabi, sige, pagkatapos ko daw, magpunta ko sa kanya, hindi ba yung plansyahin mo, sabi ko ganyan, sabi ko, hindi masyadong mainit ang plansya, sabi ko ganyan, ang gawa niya sa akin, patingin niya, sabi niya, patingin ako, kaya nung naplansya yung ganyan sa akin, naplansya. Sabi niya sa akin, hindi ko na magaya, nakatuon akong ganyan sa plangga, ididikit niya sa akin ganito. Sabi, ano, mainit, mainit. Akala ko hindi mainit. Oo, nalaman niya, umaaray ako. Boston. Business quotation.
Nasa vlog yan, nasa vlog si Gabi. Sa bata ko na
That scenario shows us that the violations against this law and that an example cases that under Domestic Workers Act or Batas Kasambahay or Republic Act number 10361, every employer has an obligation to take care of their employees and not to harass them. The same is without prejudice to the feeling of it and appreciate civil or criminal actions by the aggrieved party. For instance, an abused kasambahay who sustained physical injuries may file a complaint again for serious or less serious physical injuries before the appropriate prosecutor office courts.
Those legal codes information that I discuss is from my sources, and I hope you learn from me. Thank you everyone, and thank you for listening.